says yes. Anybody else have questions about it? All right, then I'm going to go back and talk about the other nutrients. Minerals, I gave you 3 here. There are a couple other minerals, I believe. I know iodine is on your chart. You can find that in those pages I attached to the assignment, or you could look it up. And by no means are these the only minerals. Those of you that have had science and health classes know that there are many other minerals. Fluoride is the first one. It's needed for strong teeth. And you'll notice on the chart that I've X'd off, because you really don't find fluoride in food. It would be in your toothpaste, mouthwash, fluoridated water. So you don't have to do that one. So I X'd it off. It's on the bottom. You need to write down that you need it for teeth as a function, but you don't have to do the MyPlate or the foods. Then you'll have calcium, needed for strong bones and teeth. It talked about calcium when you watched MyPlate yesterday. There's a lot of different foods that have calcium. Most of the time we think of dairy for MyPlate, but it doesn't have to be a dairy. There's many other foods that have calcium. Iron carries oxygen in the blood. If you have a lack of iron, a low red blood cell count, you get something called anemia, or you might hear somebody say they're anemic, and they might have to take iron tablets, or their doctor may prescribe them foods that would have higher iron content, which would be like your red meats, your dark greens, spinach. Does anybody like liver? It's usually not a popular one, but liver is pretty high in iron. Then the next nutrient is fats. They're insulators and energizers, and we learned about good and bad fats. That was kind of towards the end of MyPlate. The solid fats are not as good for us, like your butters and shortenings, versus your oil, like olive oil would be much better. The trans fats that are found in bakery goods would not be as good for us. Protein helps build strong muscles. I could have said build and repair my muscles. Another part of MyPlate, it doesn't have meat, although that's what we think of when we think of protein, meats, poultry, fish. We learn that there's lots of other protein sources. I'm going to click to the next page here, hopefully. Yep, water is the next nutrient. Water has lots of functions. Waste removal, chemical reactions, meaning it helps break down your food after you eat, so your digestion. It helps moisturize your skin, and it helps regulate your body temperature. Water, just an interesting fact, makes up over 60% of our body's weight. The book will tell us 68%. I've seen it as high as in the 70s percentage. That's why when people lose weight, they go, oh, I've lost a lot of weight this first week. I lost like 5-6 pounds. Much of that is your body weight starting to come off. So when you do water, don't just put water on food sources. Almost everything we eat has water. Watermelon is a popular one that students will write down. Lots of fruits. There's a chart. In those pages that I've copied, you will see charts, vitamin charts, that will show you different foods that are in those vitamins. That's what's really nice about the book and the charts. You can find the foods pretty easily there. Then we have vitamins. Just like minerals, I didn't put every vitamin. These are the ones that I want you to know. Vitamin A, needed for healthy skin and normal vision. So when they say to have carrots for your vision, that is true. There's a lot of vitamin A in carrots. You also find carotene in carrots. Other places would be your leafy greens. Again, it would be like asparagus, broccoli would be high. If you have a deficiency in vitamin A, you get something called night blindness, which means that you just don't adapt to darkness as well. People with severe night blindness would not drive a car at night, so they are lacking in vitamin A. Vitamin B's are thiamine, niacin, and riboflavin, or flavin, it's pronounced both ways. B1, B6, B12. I like you to learn the names, just as I think it's a little bit easier to remember. It's needed for a healthy nervous system, so it kind of regulates nerves. Vitamin B, the best source is in the grain group. Really, it's your bread and cereal. Vitamin C is ascorbic acid. If you look at a label, sometimes it'll say ascorbic acid, and now you know that means vitamin C. You don't want to get it mixed up with acetic acid because that would be vinegar. But ascorbic acid is vitamin C. It's needed for resisting colds. That's why when you have a cold, they say, well, drink your orange juice, because citrus fruits are very high in vitamin C, along with kale. Strawberries would be high in vitamin C. Vitamin D is known as the sunshine vitamin because you find it in sunlight. Obviously, you find it in some other foods. Fish is pretty high in vitamin C, or excuse me, D as in dog. But sunshine is a good source. It is needed for bone development, and it works with calcium to strengthen bones. I should mention that if you have a deficiency in vitamin C, as in cat, you get something called scurvy, which you don't hear about very much anymore, but scurvy, you get like swollen and bleeding gums, chapped and cracked lips. It's not very pleasant. If you have a deficiency in vitamin D, you get something called rickets, which is a brittle bone disease. It's different than, you've probably heard of osteoporosis, which is found in elderly people as their bones become more weak as they age. Rickets is a little bit different, but it is still has to do with your bone development. And vitamin K, potassium, again, which you heard in my plate yesterday, talking about potassium. It's needed for blood clotting. Good sources are bananas, potatoes, dry fruits like raisins, prunes. Those would all be high in vitamin K. Your vitamin D I didn't mention, but dairy products would be good for vitamin D. I'm going to come back here again. Hopefully, there we go. I went through that really fast. Does anybody have questions on that part of it? Okay, and then I'm just going to ask you a couple of review questions to see if you remembered anything from watching and doing the sheet on my plate. Can anybody remember any of the 5 subgroups? When you watched about vegetables right at the beginning, and that was one of my questions, they divided the vegetables up into 5 different subgroups. Does anybody remember one of those? Go ahead and type it in if you can think of what those might be. I'll give you a hint. 2 of them are colors. Related to colors. Vegetable subgroups. There we go. Dark green is the one, and the other color is red and orange. And anybody remember any of the other subgroups before I tell you what they are? Yes, there actually is one called other, and then there's one called starchy, and then beans and peas. As I'm just going to ask you, try to think of a question from each group. How about the grains? If I went to the store and wanted to buy whole grains, would I just look for any brown bread? What might they do to it that would signal that it's not whole grain? What do they add to it sometimes to trick us to think it's whole grain? Yes. Food coloring, or you might have remembered the molasses. So that's why it's really important to read labels, which I don't know if we'll get to it with a shortened trimester, but we usually talk about reading labels because just because the bread is brown, it might not be whole grain. Fruits. How can we get more fruit into our daily diet? There was lots of possible answers on that question. Can anybody think of one way we can get more fruit into our daily diet? Good. Keep it where you can see it, where it's easily to grab. Good. Exactly. Fruit smoothies like what we're going to do for lab. Any other ones that anybody can think of or what they wrote down on their sheet? They talked a lot about adding it to different foods. It added to pancakes, to yogurt, to cereal. They talked about having 100% fruit juice because you want to be real careful that it's not fruit drink because fruit drink would just be flavored water. So you want to always make sure you're having 100% fruit juice or those Dole fruit bars to make sure that those are fruit juice. Iman says add fruit to tossed salad. Perfect. Yep. Every time I watch it, I seem to pick up more ways that they say you can add fruit. How about protein? Besides meat, what are some other sources of protein? Good. I see eggs, nuts, peanut butter, beans. Good. Almond butter, tofu. Does anybody like tofu? It's not one of my favorites. I know some people like tofu on a salad. You can actually make a smoothie when we do, I didn't this year, but in my second level, when we're talking about Asian cuisine, we've made smoothies with tofu. It still kind of has a chalkier flavor or sensation in your mouth than a regular smoothie would. All right, let's see. Dairy. What are some foods now that are not included in the dairy group that they say we shouldn't, we should probably limit basically because of the high fat content? What is not included in the dairy group? Butter is a big one now. Used to be, some of you might remember the pyramid. In the pyramid food groups, butter was in the dairy group. They've taken it out because it does have high fat content. Can anybody remember any other ones besides butter that were not included in the dairy group? Very good. Cream cheese and sour cream. Those are all not included. All your milk was on the included side. All right. I think that was all the just a quick review of the My Plate. I will put a review quiz on My Plate and a review of the nutrients and matching with their functions because eventually those will be on the nutrition test. Some questions about My Plate and a matching of the nutrients, and then of course there'll be some other nutrient questions. All right, that's what I have for today. Next week I'm kind of working on next week's. We'll probably be live Tuesday or Wednesday. Next week's lab will be cookies. We usually do Mrs. Fields chocolate chip cookies and snickerdoodles. I'm only going to have you do one cookie because I want to keep moving us forward with units and labs because we're on shortened, we started late with the trimester. So we're obviously at this point we're a little bit behind, so I just want to keep